Welcome to meeting number 41 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So that you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. Please select your preference now. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. And when you are not speaking, please make sure your microphone is on mute. For the sake of the interpreters, please do not speak over each other. As is my normal practice, I will hold up a yellow card for when you have 30 seconds remaining in your intervention, and I will hold up the red card for when your time for questions has expired. Please keep your screen in gallery view so that you can see the cards when I hold them up. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on November 5th, 2020, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology is meeting today to conclude its study on the green economic recovery from COVID-19. I'd like to now welcome our witnesses. Aujourd'hui, nous avons Monsieur.
Today we have Mr. Danny Boniface as well as Mr. François Giroux, consultant from Development Innovative Transport Solutions Amended.
Mr. Mark Carney, Vice President. From the Canadian Electricity Association, Mr. Francis Bradley, President and CEO. From GHG SAT Inc., Mr. Eric Choi, Director, Business Development. From Mitrex Integrated Solar Technology, Mr. Daniel Hadizadeh, President and CEO, and Mr. Hassam Shahrivar, Head of Planning and Development. Each witness will present for up to 5 minutes, followed by rounds of questions. With that, we will start with Mr. Boniface. Vous avez la parole pour 5 minutes.
You have the floor for 5 minutes, Mr. Boniface. Mr. Boniface, we don't hear you.
I will be speaking French since it's my first language, but I do understand well if you have questions in English. Bonjour, mon nom est...
Well, hello, my name is Danny Punahachi. I'm an entrepreneur in real estate that has had quite a bit of success over my career. The interpreter, sorry, but he's cutting out. Considering the important issues with respect to climate change and the fact that time is not in our favor, I think it's become more and more difficult to be able to continue to be prosperous in my industry, knowing that there were so many issues long-term wise. My reasoning was quite simple. We are few of us that need to act for all of those people around the planet that are not able to act. So as a business person who over the last 30 years of my career, I've had both money and experience, I said that the most logical thing to do would be to have a business that would have a broad reach. So the interpreter, sorry, but he has cut out. So it's important that we look at energy efficiency with buildings, given that worldwide there's a lot of inefficiency in the existing building. I think that I'm not the only business person in Canada who says that we have to really contribute to be able to counter climate change, and that we do have the means and the experience to do so. But if we left all of the business take as much time as it did take me to come to a first project, well, I don't think we'll be able to do what we are able to do. And so this is what I'd like to recommend to the government, and I'd be able to speak to you further about it if I have the opportunity to. So we need strategies for new players that will be able to come into the industry. The interpreter is sorry, he's cut out. So these are things that can be done as a government, simply be organizer for decarbonizing the environment. And for business people, they can invest their money more quickly with government aid. An example, a real estate developer should be able to work with renewable energies. It would be easier for him to use AI. These are the same corporate structures that are being used, and it's the same steps to be able to have a renewable energy product. So I think that it's important, this effort, and it's also to be able to network. In my case, I wasn't a multinational and I wasn't Ontario Hydro, but to be able to find an energy consultant that would accept my vision, it took a huge amount of time when it should just take a very short time. And so we need to be able to have partnerships. And we have the big players, but big players need small players also to be able to move ahead and to be able to reach their objectives. So I would like to finish with my examples by speaking about a priority, which is the importance of the government to fill in the gaps between capital markets and developers. I think that there's a huge gap there that means that it's very slow for developers to be able to do their work. It should be simple, so we need to be able to have accessible capital that would be less of a cost to developers to be able to guarantee and so the question of risk has been a problem. So I'd like to end by saying we all have a role to play individually as business people. The governments have a role to play, and financial institutions have a role to play. Well, what is clear, I think governments, you are really the ones that can help accelerate the movement towards reaching our objectives, to be able to give business people the means to be able to sell their products and services internationally to it, so that we can be a prosperous nation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bonifaci. I would like to ask the technicians to connect with you. Somebody will be connecting because your internet is cutting out. We now have Mr. Giraud. You have 5 minutes. Yes, hello. Thank you very much. Hello to all. And my mother tongue is French. Even if I am able to speak English, I will be making my presentation in French. So I would like to thank all of the people who, Mr. Lemaire, who invited me to be a witness here today. So hydrogen is an essential ally in the electrification of transport. And I would like to insist on the fact that we need to be able to have Canada is now a leader and has an industry for buses, for example, transportation, and so we're very pleased with our situation. So how can hydrogen be an ally in the electrification? So that's what I'll be speaking about right now. In its current form, there is fossil fuel is being used, diesel fuel, and these fuels are really responsible for a large part of the world's harmful emissions. Canada and the transportation business in Canada really contribute much too much because of the climate and other factors. So we could say that the electrification of means of transport in general will always be constrained by the amount of energy contained in the accumulators, that is, the batteries. And even if there are developments, even if we do have researchers here that are doing great work, the weight and the volume of batteries create a limit, a physical constraint for the vehicle. That is, this is the case especially in the bus industry. So we are always limited physically because of distances that really don't correspond to what is expected within the transportation industry. So the amount of energy that is able to be able to go from Abitibi to Montreal, it would be so voluminous that the battery charge would reduce the financial profits, so that it would be a constraint that would mean that would not be viable for the business. And there has been an evolution of batteries. We've seen that things have changed with superconductors and superconductors that do help for commercial and transport vehicles, heavy road vehicles. But hydrogen is really the future. And I would like to tell you about hydrogen. It is a generator of electric energy without a combustion motor as we would have in a generator. So these are systems that can produce energy based on fuel. So the battery, the hydrogen battery, which, by the way, has been developed here in Canada, in Burnaby. Right now there are two major businesses that are working with hydrogen fuel cells, and it's Ballard and Cellcentric. Those are joint ventures where we have two major vehicle producers, Volvo and Mercedes. These two companies are already developing right here in Canada and in Europe also. They have been working on the development of these new fuels. So how can we give you an idea of a summary of what it is? So it's what we've seen in the film Back to the Future, if you remember, which transformed a banana peel and a beer into electric energy. So this integrated fuel cell in conjunction with an electric battery would be able to transport with sufficient energy and to electrify the transportation world for heavy vehicles. So the technology there is, so what are we waiting for? We have transportation, bus transportation. All of these industries are waiting for us to move forward with these new. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Giroux.
Carney, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to the members for the invitation and for your service. Je n'ai que 5 minutes, alors je ferai.
I only have 5 minutes, so I'll make 5 points. Fiscal stability is a necessary condition for the stability of Canada. Parliament of Canada has given extraordinary support to Canadians and corporations during the health crisis. But once it stops, we have to avoid structural deficits brought on by today's expenses, which will harm tomorrow's growth. This is particularly important given emerging pressures, such as the health expenditures after the pandemic.
That boost the long-term productive capacity of the economy. To help ensure that governments direct federal spending to the highest returns, capital investments should be subject to independent assessments of their long-term payback by the Parliamentary Budget Office. Second, Canada should make maximum use of non-fiscal policy levers, including effective regulation, active competition policy, measures to promote a sustainable financial system, and trade policy that benefits our small and medium-sized businesses and services sector. As the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and I have outlined, credible and predictable regulatory policies that frame the future direction of the economy, such as explicit timetables to phase out internal combustion engines and mandates for increasing hydrogen usage, will pull forward and amplify private investment. In this regard, policy frameworks with clear objectives and measurable outcomes are essential. Many of the building blocks for the net zero transition are coming into place. The 2050 objective is being enshrined in law. The new 40 to 45% reduction target by 2030 provides a medium-term anchor, and a legislated carbon price will help smooth adjustment. To provide greater clarity of the additional policy measures required, the new net zero advisory body that's proposed should publish annual objective assessments of the adequacy of policies and policy options to close any gaps. Third, it's time for a Canadian digital strategy that defines the foundation's capabilities and priorities of a digital economy in which all Canadians can thrive. The necessary initiatives are legion and merit separate study by this committee, but I'd stress the importance of Canadian-led low Earth orbit satellite systems that leapfrog existing high-speed technologies and bring enormous potential to create high-quality job opportunities across Canada. More broadly, global connectivity can drive an explosion in opportunities for all Canadians in all regions in new platforms of global commerce. With integrated trade, digital, and financial strategies, Canadians in all regions can benefit from freer trade and services and for SMEs. Fourth, we need clear pathways for a just and prosperous energy transition. In particular, eliminating the 3/4 of our greenhouse gas emissions from the final demand for energy requires a clean electricity grid by 2035 and at least a doubling of clean electricity generation as the energy source for transportation, residential, commercial property, technology, and industry. To these ends, the federal government should work with the provinces on complementary initiatives, including federal support for new grid interties, for domestic resilience, and international exports. More broadly, the scale of the energy transition and the imperatives of regional solidarity support the reinvestment of the proceeds from the energies of today into the energies of the future, including blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, and small nuclear reactors, as well as essential supporting technologies such as CCUS, DACs, and battery storage. The development of both the Canadian energy industry and the jobs of the future can be accelerated by refundable investment tax credits for a wide range of emerging low-emission technologies, including but not limited to CCUS and green hydrogen, and contracts for differences that promote demand for hydrogen, as well as targeted regulatory mandates, including for zero-emission vehicles and fuels. Fifth, it's imperative to build a new financial system to enable the transition to net zero and ensure greater inclusion, better service, and wider opportunities for Canadians. The objective of the COP26 private finance strategy is to put in place the information, tools, and markets so that every financial decision takes climate change into account. The essential building blocks include mandatory risk disclosure based on the TCFD, net zero plans of our major financial institutions consistent with GFANZ, methodologies to align financing portfolios with net zero transition, and major new markets for blended finance and for carbon offsets. Particular markets for nature-based solutions can complement absolute emissions reductions while providing major opportunities for Indigenous Canadians. I'll refer to the supporting document and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carney. We'll now go to Mr. Bradley. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Bon, ben merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Canadian Association of Electricity is the spokesperson for electricity. Our members operate in every country, province and territory, and they provide technology as well as services all across the country, in all provinces and territories.
Electricity is at the heart of the transition of Canada to a low-carbon emission economy. Over 80% of electricity production in Canada does not emit greenhouse gases, which makes our network one of the cleanest in the world. The Canadian electricity sector has already reduced its GHGs by 50% almost since 2005. Reliable, clean energy plays a frontline role when Canada starts decarbonizing by counting on electricity. Our sector is particularly well placed to help the country ensure clean energy and respect its climate commitments by 2030, 2050, and beyond. In fact, our organization published a list of actions to achieve carbon neutrality. We sent this list to the clerk of the committee for you to refer to it.
That can support industries in their transition to greener and more sustainable practices. Electricity is best positioned to enable this transition. The Canadian Institute for Climate Choices analyzed 60 pathways that it net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. All involved electricity. So we're going to need more electricity. By 2050, Canada will need to produce 2 to 3 times as much clean power as it does right now. Facilitating this increase in clean power generation and ensuring that our sector can adopt innovative technologies is where government can provide support. First, we should emphasize electrification. Grid investments should be program focused and improve the affordability and reliability of the system while reflecting Canada's diverse electricity markets. To do so, the federal government, in collaboration with stakeholders, industry, and other levels of government, should develop and implement an electrification strategy to support decarbonization. This would guide Canada's approach to reducing GHG emissions in other sectors and improving the economy. Government should also work to enable electricity investments. As the economy restarts, it will be important that planned or underway projects move forward. The Conference Board of Canada has estimated that there's the need for $1.7 trillion in investments in the sector by 2050 to meet our climate goals. Deferrals and delays hinder stimulus efforts and our climate ambitions. And there's also regulatory modernization that can be done to enable investments more broadly. We were pleased to see the 2021 federal budget include funds for Measurement Canada to update rules around, among other things, zero-emission vehicles, charging infrastructure. Ultimately, as I told your colleagues at the Environment Committee last year, we need to update legislation. We also need to think about how utilities are regulated economically. Electricity markets and rates are regulated by provincial regulatory commissions. As these bodies look to balance costs, innovative new projects that advance reliability and clean energy goals, they can face barriers before they get approved. There's a role for the federal government to play in working with the provinces to modernize this process. Enfin, il faut aussi de l'aide pour accroître la...
Finally, we have to be able to upscale nation technology, which is also needed. And so it's clearly defined as reactors, SMRs, hydrogen, CCUS, and storage. And we can see that we can solve problems with these technology, and this will help with the export market also. Each year, we look at the state of the Canadian electric sector. This year's theme is renewal.
Growing, driven by consumer demand and evolving technology. For Canada to reach net zero, our country will need to develop policies that encourage the grid to grow even further. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradley. Merci. We will now turn to Mr. Choi. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee for the opportunity to appear this morning. Let me start by saying a little bit about GHGSat. We're a small company. We're an SME established in 2011 as a private sector solution to climate change. We're headquartered in Montreal with offices in Ottawa and Calgary, and now international offices in Houston and London, England. Our vision, the vision of GHGSat, is to use satellites to become the global reference for the remote sensing of greenhouse gas emissions from any source in the world, thereby enabling stakeholders in the energy, resource, power generation, agricultural, waste management, and sustainability sectors to make informed environmental decisions. While there are obviously other satellites up there in space that also measure greenhouse gases, satellites from NASA, from the European Space Agency, for example, it's kind of a remarkable fact that GHGSat, Canadian SME, is currently the only private sector or government entity in the world that has satellites capable of high resolution greenhouse gas measurement, down to a resolution of only 25 meters. Our satellites, these Canadian satellites, are the only ones that can measure greenhouse gas emissions from sources as small as individual gas wells. And this is a critical capability for attribution. Space technology is going to play an increasingly important role in Canada's transition to greener and more sustainable practices and to building back better. Out of the 50 essential climate variables identified by the World Meteorological Organization as needing to monitor climate change, 26 of these variables can only be effectively observed from space. Environmental satellites are therefore directly aligned with the goals of Canada's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, specifically in terms of taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, that's goal 13, and promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation, per to goal number 9. Now, when we talk about fields of technology, be it space technology or green technology, there are two ways in which the Government of Canada can play a role in nurturing innovation and expanding sustainable trade opportunities. First is by investing in early stage research and development. And second is by being an early adopter of new innovations, thereby lowering the risk and allowing the private sector to bring their new products and services to the international market. Canada is a world leader in supporting early stage R&D in both industry and academia. And as an example of that, the innovative technology behind our methane monitoring satellites was developed with the support of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, the Canadian Space Agency, and the Industrial Research Assistance Program of the National Research Council. To ensure that Canada builds back better during the post-COVID economic recovery, an area of improvement for the Government of Canada would be to support industry beyond the initial R&D phase. And one of the most effective measures that could be undertaken in this regard is indeed to be an early adopter of new innovations, and further to be an ongoing anchor customer for green and sustainable technologies. This would strengthen Canadian competitiveness and expand trade opportunities, because one of the first things that a prospective customer asks internationally is whether a new product or service has been adopted by the domestic market. And there are examples of anchor tenancy in the field that we are familiar with environmental satellites looking south of the border at for example, the NASA Commercial Small Sat Acquisition Program in the US, or the third-party missions program of the European Space Agency. So this is going to be a pivotal year for Canada as we look forward to COP26 in November. One of the high-profile projects that expected to come out of this UN climate conference is the International Methane Emissions Observatory, or IMEO, which is a project of the UN Environment Program that is seeking contributions precisely of satellite data to identify methane super-emitters and thereby provide actionable data for diplomatic follow-up. In recent months, we at GHGSat have been engaged with the relevant Government of Canada departments to discuss the potential of providing Canadian satellite methane data to the IMEO as a very highly visible demonstration of our country's commitment to fighting climate change. So to conclude, reiterating some of the earlier speakers, the success of our post-pandemic recovery and the industrial transition to greener and more sustainable practices go hand in hand with both the government and the private sectors as partners in this endeavor to build back better. This concludes my prepared remarks, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Choi. We will now go to Mitrex. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the committee for inviting us, our company, Mitrex Integrated Solar Technology, to appear as a witness. Increasing urbanization and higher energy demand and non-renewable energy sources have created an environmental disaster in a form of climate change. Although the Canadian government has pledged to achieve the net zero by the year 2050, this is a huge goal and it requires everyone involved to achieve this goal in terms of commercializing it and economical options in order to achieve the net zero. The COVID-19 pandemic showed us that we are extremely vulnerable to our society, and our economy is very vulnerable to external environmental factors. We as a nation may either continue to invest in the traditional carbon emitting industries, or we choose a different path for the recovery. The path that is greener and it's built back much better than what we had. Canada Construction employs 1.4 million directly in the construction industry. From an environmental perspective, the buildings that we build are responsible for 17% of green gas emissions, which is an astonishing number if you're looking at the buildings that are being built today. And 75% of these inefficient buildings are still standing 2030 and beyond. Unless we build more sustainable building and existing buildings are retrofitted, I highly doubt that we can achieve our 2050 goals. This will be a key industry in rebuilding our economy while encouraging a sustainable growth. As a Canadian and as a human, we always can turn the problems into solutions. And this is one of those areas that we can turn it around and make a solution and create an opportunity out of the problem that we have. As the cities grow and as the high rises are rising, we have this option. Our cities are growing vertically in a form of high rise, and this creates that specific opportunity that in Mitrix we are creating the solution around, and that's a BIPV. That's building integrated photovoltaic systems. These are building materials that are built with solar, and the solar is built within them. These are not added on top. These are not layers on top of the layers. These are a different group of building materials that are built with the solar. BIPV, as all the problems that we mentioned above, all the global warmings and all the issues that we are having, BIPV is one of the solutions that can help us build more buildings, build better buildings, and help us achieve our goals by 2050. With the significant R&D that we have done in Mitrix, the BIPV material that we have created, there is no trade-off between aesthetics, sustainability, or created financial impacts. We have solved the equation and we have created a product that is embedded into the materials, and we can actually build our buildings using solar panels for the first time on a commercial scale. Canadian jobs in the STEM field and skilled trade, in our country, in the portfolio of the green building expands. So the Canada trade agenda and pursuing new agreements and opportunities that create jobs and economic benefits. Greener buildings, sustainable construction will reduce the energy demand and greenhouse gas emissions, helping us meet our 2050 net zero goals and securing our environmental futures. Thank you for your time and attention. We look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. So we will now start our round of questions. Our first 6-minute round goes to MP Polyev. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Carney, thank you for appearing. Instead of increasing affordable emissions-free hydroelectricity, the former Ontario Liberal government decided to lock in 20-year price subsidies to multinational power companies for less reliable wind and solar power. Ontario's financial accountability officer said last week the prices paid to electricity generators under the green energy contracts are significantly higher than the average price of electricity in Ontario. These high contracted prices are one of the factors that contributed to the price of electricity in Ontario doubling between 2009 and 2019. Is your company or any of its subsidiaries receiving payment under any of these contracts?
First off, thank you for the question, Mr. Polyev. I do not have knowledge of that. I can write back to the committee on it, but I honestly, I don't know the answer.
All right. Well, you are the vice president responsible for environmental, social, and governance, and this is supposedly
to be specific, Mr. Polyev. My responsibilities are for developing an impact strategy, which is a new strategy at Brookfield. I'm not responsible for previous activities, although Brookfield has much to recommend as a great Canadian company that has built renewable power.
Thank you for that. Well, the Financial Post says that Brookfield Renewable Energy Enbridge and TransAlta alone account for 38% of these subsidies. These subsidies are massive. They amount to 150% subsidy for wind, 750% for solar. That drives up the cost of energy for everyday people. According to the Ontario Association of Food Banks, in a report on the subject, has created something called energy poverty. One victim of this social injustice was Sherry Salina, a disabled single mother from Perth who's suffering with depression, anxiety, PTSD, type 2 diabetes, and chronic pain from a car accident. Her bill rose to $309 a month despite conserving electricity. I want to quote her. "My house is heated by wood and propane. My son requires a BPAP machine for his severe obstructive sleep apnea syndrome," end quote. Mr. Carney, she was terrified that the Liberal government was going to disconnect her power because she couldn't pay the bills that rose to subsidize the profits of multinational corporations like yours. I guess the question is very simple. Because you are in charge of impact investing, would you commit on behalf of Brookfield that your company will no longer accept these unjust subsidies that are driving people in Ontario into poverty and desperation?
Well, first thing, Mr. Poilievre, is the energy policy of Ontario is the responsibility of the government of Ontario. It has been put in place. And part of that energy policy, as you know, has been to diversify energy sources. And I'd associate myself with the comments of Mr. Bradley moments ago about the important role that electricity and the broad range of electricity sources are going to play in Ontario and Canada's transition to a more sustainable and inclusive economy.
But my question was, would you commit today to reject those subsidies? You can do so. Your company can. Your company can reject the subsidies and offer to charge the market rate, which is 6 cents, instead of the subsidized rate, which is about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. You could do that if you were not just interested in profits for your shareholders, but if you were interested in solidarity with people like Miss Salinas. So yes or no, would you commit today to doing that?
Mr. Poilievre, the power supply in Ontario is subject to rules that are set. One of the most important things, and I'll go back to my earlier comments to the committee, which is in order to build a competitive economy, an inclusive economy, a sustainable economy, and that on a foundation of sustainable power, it is critical that we have certainty and predictability. And so part of what happens with the evolution, and we are talking,
but you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. My question was whether you would put aside your the interests of your profits and your shareholders to put poor people who are going to the food bank because they can't pay their power bills, and they're using that money to subsidize your company. If you really believe in solidarity and not just profiting your shareholders, you could voluntarily reduce what you're charging to the government and the people of Ontario and save people from the necessity of going to the food bank to keep the lights on. So yes or no, will you do that?
Mr. Poilievre, before you stopped my answer, you're giving one characterization of the power policy of the government of Ontario, and there is a new government of Ontario, I would add, that also has ability to change a broad range of policies.
It's a locked-in contract for 20 years.
It is a locked-in contract.
Yeah, there you go. So you knew that much. You knew that much.
And a relevant point. No, I'm just waiting for you to acknowledge it. I appreciate your acknowledging it. What's also relevant, and it's exceptionally important for Ms. Salinas and people in her situation, and one of the tragedies we have in Ontario and in Canada is people living in poverty. Now, the instrument of solidarity to address poverty, broader poverty, is not targeted energy policy, but it is a broader range of support policies.
The solution is for you to stop ripping people off by overcharging them for electricity.
Mr. Poilievre, that is your time, and may I gently remind you not to talk over each other so that the interpreters can do their work. Thank you. We will now go to the next MP. It is MP Johari. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and let me start by welcoming all our witnesses. your testimony, and was quite informative in many, many fronts. So thank you very much and welcome to our committee. I'm going to start with Matrix and Mr. Hadizadeh, you talked about BITV and you talked about a new city that's going to be built and it's going to be full of high rises. With the 2.4, almost 2.24 billion dollars that the federal government just announced in building, extending the subway coming to Richmond Hill, north of 427, south of 427 is going to be full of developments, is going to be full of high rises, and to a large extent, I understand how the technology that you are introducing, BITV, or you're doing research and development, will help those. However, you also mentioned there are buildings that they're, like you mentioned, about 75% of the buildings are old buildings. In my riding of Richmond Hill, I have many, many old buildings that they date back to 1970 and 1980. How does your solution support those type? Do they have to be, forgotten, or how would your solution work with those type of buildings?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Johari. Our solution basically applies to both retrofits and the new constructions. As we build more and more high rises and more buildings, we are using concrete for using as architectural surfaces, and that's one of the highest carbon embodied material we can use. Versus the technology in the solar, which has one of the lowest carbon embodied. And at the same time, our point of view and the way our glasses to this world is, how do we integrate more solar into the materials that are in touch with the sun? Our building walls, our building windows, or the roof, these are all the line of solutions that we have created, and they are all applicable to the traditional, to the retrofit of buildings, as you mentioned, from 1970s and 80s, as well as the new constructions. One of the issues that we're going to face in the coming years is all those buildings, all those people living in older buildings, they won't have access to the EV market because these buildings, they are not designed to have more electricity. And that is the solution that we have. That is the key point, integrating more solar into the building materials and using it on retrofit and the new construction. And we keep that in mind. We know the cost and we know the aesthetics and we know the installations. Those are all the barriers of entry that we have had in the past many decades. And that's why these products, they haven't been developed. And this is part of our solution, the retrofit and the new and the EV market that's going to be connecting all these buildings and charging all those cars in the coming decades.
Thank you very much. You talked about the EV market. This is where I want to go. With the interest and the growing support of Canadians, an investment that the government of Canada is making on electrical vehicles, naturally these buildings that they're much older, they need, and they park underground. And some of these underground parkings are multi-levels. How would your solution to be able to support that type of retrofit? So as Canadians embracing the electrical vehicle, they can park their cars on the, a level 5 of a 20-year-old building and still be able to get, benefit from the EV and having a charging station. How does that work? Can you demystify that for us?
So with our solution, every building will turn into a power plant. They become these micro power plant that are generating their own electricity. This is on top of the existing grid, power that they have, and they can utilize that power into their charging stations, or they can utilize it into their common elements or the units, or however they want. There is a micro plant being built within the building that is producing green renewable energy for the decades to come. And that's how we transform these buildings.
So would your solution then integrate into the old building as well, so the energy can, well, the electricity can get down to some, many floor down? And what kind of investment does developers need to consider, or those existing buildings need to consider to be able to benefit from this solution?
Yes, that's a very good question. We have managed to keep the cost in line with the traditional materials while implementing these new technologies. And that's our edge. That's our difference with many other companies on a global scale. We have an integrated factory. It's a fully automated integrated factory that we have in Etobicoke. We produce everything locally here. And the way we have managed to create a business model is with a power purchase agreement as well as the direct purchase agreement. The builders or the building owners, they are basically not spending $1 more, but receiving renewable energy. And that's part of our business model, to transform the old building as well as the new buildings that are being built in Canada.
Yeah, thank you. I only got about another 30 seconds. What I wanted to ask you is about how do you work with the existing regulations around, provinces as they are in charge of setting the rates? How would your model work?
So right now we are just working within the existing rates that are in Ontario. Most of our projects and most of our supplies are in Ontario. But there are a lot of limiting regulations that prevent us, even though the government are saying they are with green energy companies, but once you start deploying it, there are a lot of limitations they have put in place that usually coming from Toronto Hydros or other, energy providers that prevent us.
Thank you very much. Notre prochain tour, c'est pour député.
We have MP Lemire, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I think this is very interesting, this panel, and it's very complimentary, both for transport and for buildings and energy efficiency. I think it's great that we'll be able to reduce our carbon emissions. So for Mr. Bonipace, first of all, thank you very much for being here. And let's talk about the reality here. How can we concretely help people, help developers? You're on mute. Answer. Well, the answer to that question is to give a priority. We want to put 20% of energy and to get to 80% of results. From my experience, we have to work with the buildings we have, the realty market. It's huge. We have to look at the increasing efficiency. We also have to, I think Mitrex is great with all the comments they've made. So you have to really increase your housing stock that's energy efficient. What's important is the slow pace of change, where people in their homes are very slow to change. So if we just give funding to help as an incentive, we're not going to get to our objectives very quickly. So what we need to do is we need to integrate both funding as well as penalties, and that will help make things go much quicker. There'll be less resistance. First of all, you want to be able to have digital world help in terms of moving ahead, and we need efficiency. Artificial intelligence already exists. There are different products that are already on the market right now that can be interconnected, and that can be interacted. And you, at a click of a finger, you can see at least 20% of energy efficiency without any investment, and that's just through AI. So that would be a help for the existing housing. We have, it would be easier rather than producing more housing, which to energy refit the existing housing. So question, I'm going to ask you, how can we help? Thank you very much for your answer as to how we can help our businesses. Well, in the building market, you have to produce more, but you really have to give support also. When you have an environment where you have a lower cost for electricity, it's hard to justify programs such as what Mitrex is offering. And to come back to artificial intelligence with the housing and with the changes that are coming forth, that could be used within the industry, in all industries. So there can be important efficiencies and savings with artificial intelligence. And to come back to your question again, I would like to come back to the production of renewable energy. That industry, my philosophy is simple. The increase in demand is so strong, and we need to replace fossil fuels, that we need to have more actors on the playing field and many more projects that occur. One of the things that comes to mind is all of where you give funding to be able to do mining and oil industry and for forestry, but why is there no legislation funding for renewables? I'm here just next to Ontario. We have incredible forestry cutting now, and these are huge spaces where you could be putting solar panels. We're just next to Ontario, where the second greatest contributor of greenhouse gases. Mr. Carney was saying that these things could be of interest to him because we don't have any borders when it comes to climate change. We have to find renewable energy portfolio standards where we can find financial incentives, but there are means to be able to have space where we would be able to generate more projects. And also I would like to make an analogy with the mining industry. We're able to provide, say, within that industry, the equivalent of shares that would be promote mining exploration, and so you'd be able to propose different sites to be able to have more projects. And so I think this would be a good way of working so that we'd have more effort that would be put into startups. And I think that Alberta is the only province where there's deregulation, but I think that right now there are 7 different companies that are doing a startup group, but these are the only 7 in Canada that are working for all the big companies. So I think we need more than that. We need to have tax credit. We need to have exploration where we can be able to produce renewable energy. Third question, what can we do to help the transition and to help our business people? Well, for business people, I can tell you very quickly. For a person such as myself who is investing, we have people that want to invest, and if there were tax credits, that would give me a much broader possibility to be able to invest in renewable energy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
MP Massey, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for our witnesses for being here today. My first question with Mr. Carney, with regards to Brookfield Asset Management, Inc., the claim was made that it was carbon neutral. That appeared to walk back a little bit. That was a few months ago. Maybe perhaps you can provide us kind of what was the differential then and what has happened in that portfolio and your company that you represent in the last number of months to correct that, or if it's not going to be corrected, what's the current status of that?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Massey, and let me use the terms very precisely. You asked the question about carbon neutral, and I'm going to distinguish between carbon neutral and net zero. So carbon neutral relates to emissions reductions and avoidance. Net zero, of course, is reductions versus emissions themselves. Brookfield Asset Management as a whole is carbon neutral. It is carbon neutral. In other words, the scale of avoided emissions more than compensates for the emissions of other companies, other assets that it owns or controls. It is not net zero. In other words, there is considerable avoided emissions, and let me explain that.
Well, I don't have that much time. We don't have to get into different. I'm just wondering if there was a gap between what was said by yourself and what was expressed. I'm just looking what the company has done since that time. I'm not really. I'm just trying to look for what happened over the last.
Well, it's important. It's important. These definitions are important, and the reality.
It's my question time, and I don't need definitions. I just want to know there was a discrepancy. It's very public. It was in Reuters, a series of different news articles, and I'm just asking what has been done to narrow that gap. Perhaps there was nothing. I don't know. I'm just.
Mr. Mass. Okay, so since you won't want a definition, you asked about carbon neutrality. Brookfield Asset Management is carbon neutral because the scale of the emissions reduced are more than twice the emissions, for example, of Toronto. There's 43,000, there's 20,000 megawatts of renewable power. It's one of the largest private.
I was asking what was done between the discrepancy that took place, so that's fine. I don't like.
Well, the discrepancy, I'm sorry, Mr. Mass, but you are asking about different things. You are asking, and this is important. So, and from a Canadian perspective, neutrality, avoided emissions, which would include, this is not an issue for Brookfield, but from Canada as a whole would include nature-based solutions, preservation of nature-based solutions, very large potential benefits for Indigenous populations and regional populations across Canada. That is an important distinction. So I was responding to your specific question, which was about carbon neutrality.
And all I was asking is what took place. I didn't ask for definitions. I was at your company. I was asking what was done between the discrepancy that you had between yourself and interpretation that was in the media reports later. So I don't know what happened over the last 3-4 months. That was the opportunity I was offering to actually explain what you actually physically got done in the gap between the two. So that was an opportunity I was trying to afford. I'm going to go with Mr. Boniface. With regards to the practical applications of building projects, what are the specific things that can be done to enhance, I guess, getting off the grid for builds? What are the things that, if you had 3 things to talk about with regards to making easier access for the development, what would those things be? Because we have federal incentives that have come and gone over the years, but what would those things be? Could they be, like in the past, they've been windows, doors. In fact, actually, some governments have actually allowed incentives to go for decks and fencing. But more specific is that other things have targeted, lower emissions. What would be the things that you would suggest?
Mr. Boniface, vous êtes en sourdine.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Massé. Can you just define the question a little more precise so I can understand?
Yeah, so sorry. Just what would be the incentives or the parameters for allowing development to take place to help people remove themselves from energy dependency? In the past, we've had programs that have had incentives to, do anything from building decks to fences, but other ones have been geared to windows, doors, and lower emissions. Are there 3 things that you would suggest where if there were incentives that they should be targeted to?
Well, essentially, I think that everybody should be an energy producer in Canada. I don't think it should specifically be for the big players. A lot of wealth is associated to energy, and I think it's something that should be shared among us all. Specifically, I would target everything, all the incentives that can be used to produce energy. And that is as much in the building industry as in the renewable industry, you understand? And I think that everything that can be done to help newcomers in the industry is essential, because people like me that changed industry and that want to do a difference understand that we have to produce and save. Yeah. And in producing, we need to build business models to access this. And in helping either the finance, in financing these renewable energy products, or financing the retrofits of our building and putting Mitrex products, are all essentially good, because we're generating electricity, and if we're producing more than we need, we can just send some in other markets that need to have.
And that's, yeah, no, I'm running out of time, but that's so real quick. The support for, say, for example, having cars that provide energy for homes in downturn and selling that back to the grid is probably a positive thing.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
what CalPERS is doing.
Yeah. Thank you very
absolutely.
much. My apologies, Mr. Massey.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
It's okay. Usually give up a little time every meeting, so I gave you a little extra there. So we'll now start our second round of questions, and our first 5-minute round goes to MP Poilievre.
Your company and your company alone, Mr. Carney, has the legal authority to reject the subsidies that have doubled power bills on poor and working class Ontarians. Simple yes or no question. Will you turn down those subsidies to give Ontario's poor a break? Just a yes or no.
Mr. Poilievre, as you said moments ago, there are contracts put in place between the Ontario government and players in the Ontario power market that are providing electricity for Ontarians.
Overcharging, yes or no?
And so both sides of those contracts are honored.
Yes or no?
Mr. Poilievre, may I ask you to not speak over the witness? I can't hear the answer, and therefore the interpreters can.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
What is the point of order?
Point of order is that the rule is that the answer mustn't exceed the length of the question. Mr. Carney's had that length. He hasn't answered the question. Can we move on?
That is not actually the rule, but I will let you answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we're not going to get an answer. It looks like that you and your company will continue to profit off the backs of poor and working class Ontarians by taking these massive government subsidies that you wrote into a contract under your previous Liberal government. Moving to the first point of your presentation on fiscal sustainability, do you support Mr. Trudeau's structural deficits?
As I said in my presentation, we should avoid structural deficits. So I make a distinction, as I believe you do, between the support that is provided during the COVID emergency and once we emerge from this situation, avoiding having deficits being driven by current spending that, as I said in my presentation, does not grow the economy in the future.
So is the current government on a sustainable fiscal path?
In my judgment, it is on a sustainable fiscal path because the deficit by the end of year 5 is largely driven, in fact, from what I can tell, is driven by those growth promoting measures, yes.
So you do support it. Do you think there's any chance that on this path we could have a debt crisis?
I think for Canada, no. Canada's situation is very strong. We must use, though, if I may add, we must use our fiscal resources very wisely and particularly with respect to the point of this committee's inquiry to effect for the type of proposals that have been discussed by colleagues.
Have you advised any ministers in the government, their staff or deputy ministers since September?
Advised. I have been asked questions from time to time by ministers and deputies, yes.
About climate finance? Have you talked to them about that?
I have talked to some ministers about climate finance. I would remind
September?
if I would
Since September?
Well, I am the UN Special Envoy for Climate Finance, and I've spoken to ministers, deputy ministers, leaders.
Okay, since September?
I would add.
Sorry, you seem to be dodging the question. I don't know what you're hiding there. Since September?
Monsieur Polyev, I began with yes, so that is not a dodge.
Okay, good. Then you've answered the question. Have you contacted the lobbying commissioner to find out if this is in contravention of the rules? Given that you do stand to profit off of the policy decisions in this area, you are part of a company that could potentially make financial gains from the massive subsidies and other government policies that you've profited from at a provincial level. Have you checked with the lobbying commissioner?
Madam Chair, point of order.
Whether you should
Madam
be
Chair,
registering?
point of order.
We have a point of order on the floor. Mr. Asasi, your point of order?
Madam Chair, as the member is fully aware, there has to be some relevance to his questions to what we're discussing here today. And I certainly don't see the relevance.
So, Mr. Polyev, I remind you that we are doing the study on the economic recovery. This is not a study into Mr. Carney's business profile. So can I ask that you please continue to focus your questions on the study? Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Just on the point of relevance, the members' questions absolutely are relevant. When you, for example, go to the website of Brookfield Assets, the second and the fourth headline are driving to net zero and driving tomorrow's economy with renewable power. So it absolutely seems to me to be relevant within the scope of this particular study for the member to be pursuing questions to the witness about topics he himself presented on in his opening comments and relevant to the subject of the study.
I'm ruling that I'd like the Mr. Polyev to continue his questions, but to make sure that they stay in line with the study. So I'm giving him back his time if he would like to continue.
Yes, Mr. Carney, you do stand to profit off of these policies, and yet you are regularly intervening and influencing the decisions of ministers, deputy ministers, and you've done so since you became an executive at Brookfield. Did you register, yes or no, your interactions with the lobbying commissioner?
I'm sorry, I'm not going to have the premises to that question stand. I do not intervene. I do not influence. I would remind the members.
Did you register?
I would remind that I am an envoy of the United Nations, an advisor of the
right,
UK
another
Prime
conflict
Minister
of interest.
with respect to COP26, and that the United Nations and the UK government
did you register to lobby, Mr. Carney? Yes or no?
If I may be allowed to, if I may note, I have testified
did you register to lobby?
to Parliament.
Did you register to
over
lobby?
my career? I'm normally
did you register to lobby?
To answer the question.
Madam Chair,
did you register to
point
lobby?
of order.
Mr. Polyev, may I ask that you allow the witness to answer before you talk over, because we can't hear the answer. Thank you.
Did he register to lobby?
I represent the United Nations. I represent the UK.
Do you register? Did you register to lobby? Yes or no?
We have a public
point of order, Madam Chair.
Strategy. I would like
point
to
of order.
answer the question.
Yeah,
yes,
that's a great idea to the witness. I think the witness probably should answer the MP's
Madam
question,
Stubbs,
since that's
Madam
what
Stubbs,
witnesses are supposed to do at committee.
Madam Stubbs?
My point of order is if you can actually ask the witness just to answer the yes or no question in the same time that it took the member to ask him the question, because that's the practice of committee, and that's what witnesses are here at committee to do. Just answer the question by members of Parliament.
Madam
Thanks,
Stubbs,
Chair.
Madam Stubbs, this committee, we give the 6-minute or the round to the MP, and they can use that round as they see fit. The committee does not have the same practice as in the House, so I will let Mr. Polyev continue. He has about 20 seconds remaining in his round if he'd like to ask the witness a question, and we'll wait for the answer. Thank you.
Your company says that it seeks to make profit off of these so-called green investments, which usually mean government subsidies. So you have a financial interest in these policies, sir. Your bonus is probably tied to them. Did you register to lobby the many ministers, deputy ministers, and staff that you've contacted since you took this job? Yes or no?
I don't lobby, period.
Unfortunately, that's your round of questions, MP Polyev. We will now go to MP Lambropoulos. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here with us to answer our questions today. Mr. Carney, my questions will mainly be going to you. As you know, it's still quite expensive for companies, especially smaller businesses, to transition to greener practices at this point in time. I'm asking from an investor's perspective if you can give some advice to smaller and medium-sized businesses in order to help them successfully transition to net zero. And also, what can the government do to help them get to that point?
Well, one of the ways to help small, medium-sized businesses is to ensure that our larger businesses are transitioning to net zero and are doing so in a transparent fashion and a comprehensive fashion. And let me explain what I mean by that, which is that to the extent to which the larger companies include not just their own emissions from their activities, but the emissions from power, scope 2 emissions, as you're familiar, but also scope 3 emissions, very importantly, scope 3 emissions. So in other words, the emissions of their major suppliers and downstream customers. And that creates an alignment of incentives between the various companies that can promote the reduction of those emissions. So elements that are associated with disclosure of those emissions, I referenced in my opening comments, the TCFD disclosure requirements. I also referenced net zero transition plans and the comprehensive plans that companies have and increasingly Canadians are putting in place, and consistent requirements for that for the financial sector, including, very importantly, banks, who are, of course, the biggest source of finance for small and medium-sized enterprises. And that can create an alignment and provide capital for exactly the type of emission reductions. And I would, if I may, on the final point, which this is the heart of the publicly disclosed, publicly available, universally applied COP26 private finance strategy that for which I serve the UN.
Thank you very much. And you also mentioned earlier that every decision by government should take climate into account. I agree. If we aim for net zero emissions by 2050, obviously we need to start taking steps right now. I'm wondering if you can comment on whether or not Budget 2021 is a good start and is going to help us get to that at least 40 to 45% reduction by 2030 and eventually net zero by 2050.
Well, I think first is that the ethos that you just referenced is at the heart. In my reading of the budget, is at the heart of the budget, which is that there are consistent and comprehensive assessments of the impact of policies, all policies on climate change, including on ensuring a just transition. So the ramifications of some of these adjustments for Canadians and Canadian regions, so that appropriate support is provided. Secondly, I think an important innovation, which I guess formally you're more familiar than I, but outside of the budget per se, but a separate bill, is the I guess it's Bill C-12 from memory, which puts in place this net zero advisory body, which provides, and I recommended in my opening remarks, that provides a framework so that we don't just know where we stand or where we're going, but where we stand today. In other words, the adequacy of policies that have currently been put in place, actual and prospective, identifying any gaps between those policies and the target. And as you well know, and members will be familiar, the 40 to 45% target is a new target. And so there will, in my judgment, be additional policies that are required, which of course just underscores how important that this committee's work on these issues is.
I was wondering if you can comment a little bit more on that, taking climate into account on every decision. We have a gender-based analysis, which is technically supposed to look at every policy and program through a gender-based lens. Wondering if you can explain explicitly, so that we can use them in our recommendations, what exactly this would look like from a climate perspective.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, and let me take one step back, which is the core of the work. I'll be quick. On the financial side, is ensuring that there's the information and the markets in order to take climate change into account, whether you're a bank or a pension fund or a life insurance company. I think the gender-based approach, and I was an official in the Department of Finance when the first version of that came about, that sort of comprehensive item-by-item assessment of the impact, and I'll stop here, Chair, the impact ultimately on GHG emissions is entirely appropriate. And I would last point is it's not just, of course, mitigation, but it's adaptation and resilience. Those aspects of climate change are essential.
Thank you so much.
Notre prochain tour, c'est député Lemire. Vous avez...
We now have Member Lemire. Thank you. My question is for Mr. Giroux. Thank you for being here. I would like to ask you, what is your ideal vision for the development of hydrogen? How can we use it in the transport industry, and how are batteries recharges? Can be recharged? Can hydrogen help? Well, thank you very much. For hydrogen, I think the most important step is what we call the distribution chain, the chain supply. So hydrogen is a fuel which is stored in a gas state, and it can be even stored in liquid state, so just like propane. And so it has similar characteristics, but you need containers that are better adapted to the physical properties of the hydrogen. So in terms of incentives for the distribution sector, for transportation, for mobility, I think we need to have that fuel available to the industry along all of the transportation routes. So once you have a production and distribution, you need, if you look at the interactive map of Europe just for Spain and France, there will be 60 to 80 hydrogen supply posts. And it's going to be moving up to 300, and that's just for 2 countries. So hydrogen is really an evolving fuel. So for distribution and accessibility is absolutely necessary, so that you can't make the same mistakes as has happened with other products. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to talk about alternative fuels. It's not green hydrogen. Could it be efficient for Canada? And if what would be the form that green energy could take? Well, it's efficient, yes. So if you look at Quebec, you can already produce, you have a production capacity for clean hydrogen with hydroelectric power. So you can produce through electrolysis. And in Spain, they announced just a few days ago that they're going to be producing from hydrogen with solar panels. So Quebec, we're ready. We're ready to produce green energy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This goes to MP Massey. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Carney, you said before, and I'll turn the floor over to you to answer this. I won't interrupt. I'm not trying to pick on anything, and I didn't want to get into definition and so forth. So I'm going to turn my time over a minute. You said before, though, and I just want to get an idea where this is at now. To be clear, more expensive liquidity is a price well worth paying for making the core of the system more robust. Removing public subsidies is absolutely necessary for real markets to exist. So that's what you said. I'm just wondering, that was 5 years ago. So to be fair, I think a lot of things have changed. And I'll turn it over to you now. But is that the same kind of philosophy you stand by for like affordable housing or government investments and so forth, and how much we pay for those? And I'll turn the rest of my time over to you. There won't be any back and forth.
Much appreciated. Thank you. 5 years ago, what that I believe refers to is providing liquidity to financial institutions, to large banks, and liquidity insurance being provided by central banks. And so the issue, one of the things that we've tried to do, Mr. Massey, and including in Canada, but internationally, has been to treat banks more like everybody else in the market. So whether you own a small shop, a small farm, or large business, small business, if you make mistakes, you fail, you bear the consequences. Well, the reality in the financial crisis was banks didn't bear the consequences. They were supported with extraordinary liquidity and other mechanisms, and we've looked to change that so-called too big to fail approach. Consequence of that is adjusting the liquidity and when liquidity is provided into financial institutions, including banks, so that they themselves self-insure more. In other words, they keep more liquidity, more buffers for a rainy day, as all of us try to do as individuals, whether on our own basis or as businesses. And so the cost of that applies for the financial system. Over time, that means a lower cost of financial system, and very much to Canadian taxpayers, because it means that the state doesn't have to come in and bail out the institution because it hasn't put aside funds for a rainy day. And so that is a financial issue. I wouldn't take that from the financial sector and port that over to the other parts of the economy.
Thank you, and I think that's my time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MP Massey. We'll now go to MP Polyev. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carney, can you tell me the countries from which your company sources the polysilicon that goes into its solar panels?
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't, but I can tell you that a number of the solar arrays, or the main components of solar arrays, and I would come from China, which is one of the largest producers. In fact, is the largest producer in the world of solar arrays.
Yes, that is true. In fact, half of the polysilicon, which is the main raw material used to make solar wafers, is produced in highly secretive coal-powered factories in the Xinjiang region, the same place the communist regime is carrying out a genocide against the Muslim minority. I'm going to quote Reuters here. Quote, some U.S. lawmakers have voiced growing concern that the industry is dependent upon products, specifically the raw material polysilicon, linked to work camps in China's Xinjiang region. The U.S. State Department has made a determination that Chinese officials are perpetrating genocide there, and imports of cotton and tomato products from the region were banned this year. Will you make the commitment on behalf of Brookfield that you will not source any materials from the Xinjiang region?
I'll make the commitment that we will not source materials that have the supply chain that you described, yes.
So does that mean you will not source any materials for your solar panels from the Xinjiang region?
Well, I think one has to look at, I don't have with me today the exact source, the exact companies and the specifics. So I'm not, if I may, I'm not going to take the reference from a media report and apply it as fact. But certainly ethical sourcing is important to us at Brookfield, yes.
Well, that's a nice talking point, but you would think you would know one way or the other whether your materials are, being that you are responsible for environment, social, and governance for this massive $500 billion enterprise, that you would know off the top of your head if the materials were coming from a place known for slavery, genocide, and coal-fired electricity.
What I'm saying, Mr. Polyev, is I do not believe that that is the case.
But you haven't verified
and so you've asked me the question. Well, I have no reason to believe that it is the case. No.
Yeah. Okay. But you don't know. It just seems astonishing to me that someone who's responsible for environment, social, and governance would not want to guarantee that raw materials for your products are not coming from that kind of a region. And you've just said that the provenance is China. Well, the region in China where this material is produced is the Xinjiang region. So I'm just shocked that you haven't looked into this. It seems like you're concerned more with shareholder profits than you are with human rights and social justice. Your executive, I'm going to ask a question now. Your CEO says that 1/3 of Brookfield's business will be in China within 25 years. China is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. Why are you moving your resources and your capital to a country that has such intense emissions of greenhouse gases when that's the opposite of what you state is your purpose?
Well, to be clear on the specific, my role at Brookfield, which is to develop a strategy, which we are developing, which is to invest in companies, remove and eliminate greenhouse gases. So that's the impact, that's the transition approach. So what one does in that situation, if you may follow, is you go to where the emissions are and you convert dirty activities to green activities. And in fact, this is I believed when I accepted the invitation, was the focus of this this committee, is how we could do it for Canada. And so Brookfield is working. What I'm doing,
I don't think I'm getting an answer here.
If I may, you keep
had plenty of time, sir.
May
I please go on to my next question?
Well, actually, I wouldn't mind, rather than having your characterization of what I do, being allowed to give what I do, the facts of what I do, and what my responsibilities are. And my responsibilities at Brookfield are developing a transition fund, which we think will be world leading, which is to help.
And I'm commenting on the impact that has on human rights around the world, sir. That's the point. And so I'll conclude
greenhouse gas emissions.
A final question, an ethical way. Thank you. Do you believe that the Chinese government is perpetrating a genocide on the Uyghur people? Put shareholder profits aside and just focus on humanity here for a moment.
I focus on humanity. I spend
so yes or no?
Time focused on humanity, which is dedicated to my.
Yes or no?
I'm deeply concerned by the situation and with the
yes or no.
Thank you very much, Mr. Polyev. Unfortunately,
shareholders first. Protecting the profits.
Thank you very much, Mr. Polyev. Our next round of questioning goes to MP Assassi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. I have to share with you, I've never seen such unbridled enthusiasm amongst my colleagues. So thank you for appearing here today and for your testimony. Now, I have questions for Mr. Choi as well as Mr. Carney. Perhaps I should start with Mr. Choi. Mr. Choi, it is incredible what you are doing at GHG SAT. This is really cutting edge work that you've undertaken. And in your testimony, you refer to actionable data. Who is that actionable data for?
Well, Mr. Assassi, thank you so much for this question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and address the committee today. When we talk about actionable data, we talk about having timely objective and transparent measures of greenhouse gas emissions to various stakeholders. And these stakeholders at this point primarily are in the commercial sector. So we provide our data to the oil and gas sector. We provide our data to the resource sector, to the waste management sector, to the energy sector, and also in general to the sustainability sector. And in the future, we feel that this objective data on greenhouse gas emissions would be also of tremendous value as the financial world pivots towards ESG metrics, and certainly there'd be a lot of value in those regards as well. The other area in terms of providing information, and I hinted at this in my prepared remarks, is governments and government regulations and supporting government regulations as we look towards things like Canada's obligations under the Paris Agreement, the Canadian Net Zero Accountabilities Act. We are already engaged with a number of provincial authorities, for example, the Alberta Energy Regulator and similar authorities in BC and in other provinces. And we very much look forward to an opportunity to bring our capabilities to bear to serve the needs of the government of Canada as a whole. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Now, if I could go to Mr. Carney. You have been on record on numerous occasions suggesting that climate change is a great concern, but you also talk about both the challenges and the opportunities for Canadian companies. You have actually said those who invest in achieving net zero will be rewarded, and those that remain part of the problem will be punished. Can you talk about both sides of the ledger for us and unpack it for us?
Thank you for the question. I think the first to recognize that the scale of the risk that is involved with climate change. Climate change is real, it needs to be addressed, and I commend the government for recognizing both aspects of that. Secondly is being clear how it is going to be addressed, the speed with which it will be addressed, and not just net zero by 2050, which is the minimum required in order to stabilize the climate, but very importantly, interim targets, and those interim targets backed up by real policies such as price on carbon, the measures implemented in the budget, and many others. And the point is that what's happening, it's already begun to happen and is happening, is that companies are responding. Entrepreneurs, individuals, and some of them are represented today. Think of the innovation that Mr. Choi just spoke of with his company, coming up with solutions that address the problem. And those solutions have value. Those solutions are valuable because they are helping, for example, in the case of Mr. Choi, us to have real-time monitoring of emissions such as methane across the world, so that investments can be made and verified and tracked over time, so that we get the types of emissions reductions. There are a number of other examples. Mr. Bonipace has spoken about the building industry and the opportunities in artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are many Canadian companies, many of which are centered in Quebec, in fact, in the artificial intelligence cluster there, that have that HVAC optimization expertise. That's another example. And then when we think about it, and I'll finish with this, Madam Chair, is that as we move forward into a hydrogen economy, but very crucial technologies, and I'm surprised we haven't really addressed them today, around carbon capture and storage, direct air capture. These are essential technologies for Canadian energy and for Canadian jobs. We absolutely need these technologies to work in order to have the transition that Canadians deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go into our third round, and our first 5-minute round goes to MP Polyev.
I just want to make sure we're not dealing with more hypocritical window dressing here. Mr. Carney, it would cost your shareholders for you to recognize the Chinese genocide of the Uyghur people, because you're planning to move a third of your company's $500 billion portfolio to that country. But it would be the right thing to do. And it would be a courageous thing to do. So well, yes or no? No, you don't interrupt my question. I haven't asked it yet.
Okay.
Will you recognize on behalf of your company the genocide perpetrated by China against the Uyghur people? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, point of order.
One moment, I'll stop the clock. Yes, Mr. Mr. Assassi, what is your point of order?
Madam Chair, as the member is fully aware, questions have to, first of all, not be repetitive. Secondly, they have to be relevant to the study that is before
genocide is
this
not relevant.
committee.
First, lobbying rules were not relevant.
Mr. Polyev,
Mr.
Polyev, I am trying to
Mr.
hear
Polyev,
the point of order. Can you please hold one moment, please? Mr. Assassi, you have the floor.
All of the members are fully aware that the topic of this study before us today is economic recovery. And yet the member continues to ask repetitive questions that have nothing to do with economic recovery that Canadians are looking forward to. So I would please ask the member to refrain from continuing to ask questions that really do not fall within the ambit of today's study.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Stubbs, I'm about to rule on this point of order.
Great.
Is it with relation to this point of order?
It is.
Go ahead.
So the name of the motion of the study says supporting industries in their transition to greener and more sustainable practices, talks about innovation initiatives. That's exactly the kind of things that Brookfield Assets is invested in. It's exactly the reason why Mr. Carney is here to address the committee. The MP Polyev is clearly asking questions related to Brookfield's asset management, which has investments in this exact area, which is the topic of the study, and where Brookfield Asset Management is invested, it is quite clearly relevant. And it seems to me that an accepted practice additionally in committee is that witnesses don't necessarily determine the topic or the questions it is that they want to answer. Since you yourself has said that the time belongs to the Member of Parliament, I think the Member of Parliament should be allowed to use his time accordingly, and the witness should be compelled to answer his questions. Thanks, Chair.
So thank you very much for your point. I see MP Massey on the same point of order. Go ahead.
Real quickly, Madam Chair. Our most recent trade agreement with the United States, which has been upheld by the Deputy Prime Minister as being kind of a template for future agreements, includes labor and environmental provisions. That's with the United States. So as awkward as it is, I think some of these questions are relevant. It would be nice to give the witnesses a little bit extra space to be able to answer, but that's just my opinion, is that they're relevant, and the parliamentary secretary's objections to these are not warranted nor fair, because the reality is it's been upheld by his own Deputy Prime Minister that labor and environmental rights are important parts of trade agreements, unless they don't believe that. But that's the reality of what we actually passed and what is in front of us.
Thank you very much. I think we have Mr. Erskine Smith also on the same point of order. You're on mute.
Just briefly, Chair, to my recollection, the witness did acknowledge human rights concerns and violations, recognize that did not want to see supply chains that move through those that were affected by those human rights concerns. And the specific question in relation to whether this meets the international definition of genocide that we have weighed in by way of debate in our own House of Commons, I don't see how that particular question is relevant for this witness in the course of this hearing. If he chooses to answer, so be it. If he has a view of it, so be it. We all, I think, as members of Parliament, having recently debated, have a view of it. I don't entirely see the relevance for the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you very much. And I would like to be able to rule on this. MP Assassi.
I think if anyone does look at the record, Madam Chair, first of all, they're repetitive, the questions that the member has asked. Secondly, just to echo the sentiments of Mr. Erskine Smith, if we're getting into the ethics commissioner, if we're getting into human rights, surely we can all agree that that is not relevant to the issue that is before this committee.
Okay, one moment. Okay, I would like to rule on the point of order because we also would have other witnesses here and we have time still to ask questions, and I want to make sure all the members have their chance to ask questions. with respect to the specific question that was posed by MP Polyev, I believe the witness has already answered it, as has indicated by Mr. Erskine-Smith. I will ask that we remain on topic. You still have a few minutes left in your intervention. The question on whether or not the situation is genocide is not relevant to the study at hand. However, I will ask MP Polyev to continue.
Order,
I'm ruling yes, Mr. Polyev.
Well, it is relevant because the investments that Mr. Carney is bragging about in China do support the regime that is carrying out the genocide. So if we're going to have a just recovery, build back better, then we have to, and create solidarity, which Mr. Carney has spoken about today, then we have to know what his position is on this subject. So it is relevant.
Mr. Polyev, I've ruled that
the
question of what we are not studying whether this is genocide or not. We are studying economic recovery. Right. So I'm going to ask you, for the sake of the other MPs here on committee who want to have their time as well, could I ask you to please continue your questions of the witness and please make sure they are relevant to the study. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, they can bubble wrap the witness all they want, but these are serious questions to which Canadians deserve answers. I'll move on to another one because Mr. Carney refused to answer the last one. Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway pipeline.
Do you support it?
Given both environmental and commercial reasons.
Do you support it?
I think it was sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
And yet your company has invested billions of dollars in oil companies in both Brazil and the UAE to buy pipelines. You bought billions of dollars of pipelines as a company in the last 5 years. Do you support those investments?
Mr. Polyev, there is a global energy system, and one of the issues, I'm trying to explain a bit of how the economy works. One of the
Thank
issues,
you so much.
It may help. One of the issues for this committee in thinking about a sustainable transition.
Do you support it?
Where is Canada's role in those as energy transitions from fossil fuels to renewables, and in different jurisdictions? Into different geography, it matters. It matters, and this is a fundamental point.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This is a fundamental. You're finally getting to a point
you've exceeded
that
the
is
time.
relevant to this committee's inquiry.
What you're saying is you oppose pipelines in Canada, but you support them in the UAE and in Brazil. That's what you've actually said.
There are specific.
That's your double standard.
It is not a double standard.
It is a double standard.
No, it's not.
You make billions of dollars off foreign pipelines, and you shut them down here at home, putting our people out of work.
That you are a representative of the Canadian people, and one of your responsibilities, including at this committee,
is to fight for Canadian jobs, and not foreign jobs like you.
Exactly, to fight for Canadian jobs, and the types of Canadian jobs that are durable and are going to move forward.
Right.
I grew up in Alberta. I know the innovative nature of that.
Well, go try to give that answer back in Alberta, because I grew up there too, and I can tell you the people. I can tell you the people of Alberta would be ashamed with the answer you just gave. That you would give billions of dollars to foreign pipelines, while not allowing Canadians to build pipelines here at home. That is the kind of elite Davos hypocrisy.
Could I please,
Madam Chair, this is really unbecoming of a member to badger any witness. This is really, truly unacceptable.
So, we have a point of order from Monsieur Lemire. Vas-y, Monsieur Lemire.
Je veux juste apporter le point de la traduction.
I just wanted to note that the translation is very difficult. We know that the conditions are very difficult for interpreters. It's very hard in virtually, so I think that we should act professionally. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. That was the point that I've been trying to make since the beginning of the meeting, that we should not be speaking over each other, because then you can't do translation.
Members, I want you to be able to ask your question, and I want the witness to be able to answer, but please don't talk over each other so that we can actually have the translation. So with that, continue, Mr. Polyev.
Thank you. Mr. Carney, you've just said you support your leaders' decision to kill a Western Canadian pipeline that ships the most ethical product in the world. Yet you also support your company's decision to invest billions of dollars in foreign pipelines in Brazil and in the UAE. It's clear that this is not about the environment. If it were, you'd be consistent and you'd oppose fossil fuels everywhere, but you're happy to profit off of foreign fossil fuel companies while killing jobs among our own people. How do you address that flagrant hypocrisy? It smacks of the Davos elite at its worst.
Okay. First thing, absolutely, I support Canadian jobs, and I support Canadian jobs today and tomorrow. And in order to have those jobs tomorrow, what we need and what this committee can contribute is an energy transition. The Canadian fossil fuels, Canadian companies will play an essential role. Brookfield itself is heavily invested in Canada, including in energy infrastructure for fossil fuels, but it's also, and we connect collectively as Canadians, and we look to our parliament to support this, need to be putting in place the energies and industries of the future. That means carbon capture and storage. That means blue hydrogen, and both of which are absolutely essential for Canadian jobs in my home province of Alberta, and that's where the future lies. Now, we need to have the overall picture, which is why, and I'll finish with this, Chair, I emphasize the clear pathways, walking back from that, not jumping on specifics, and not seeing the bigger picture, nor providing the support that Canadians deserve.
Thank you very much. Our next round goes to MP Erskine Smith. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Mr. Carney, I want to start with you. We have come a long way on climate action since 2015. The rising price on pollution, phasing out coal-fired electricity, methane rules, and then in the recent December climate plan, updated climate plan, but also in the recent budget, we see a collective $8 billion clean tech innovation fund, a home retrofit program, and more. You've also advocated for quite a while now for greater climate disclosure, and that has a significant place in the budget. When we look at the scale of investment required, we've heard from Oxford's Economic Recovery Project. They've said Canada isn't in the top tier of countries that are investing in a green recovery. We're investing a lot, obviously, by way of the recent budget, but we are not in the top tier of countries around the world. You've said, I think, you don't do it through one budget. When we look at the scale of investment, how much more does Canada need to bring to bear towards a green transition?
Thank you, Mr. Erskine Smith. I think, let me start with something Mr. Bradley said in his opening remarks, which gave a sense of the scale of what we required in the electricity sector. So, and forgive me, Mr. Bradley, but I agree on the order of magnitude, I believe, of $1.3 trillion of investment over time. And these are enormous sums, but they're also consistent with taking what is a remarkable system at present, almost 85% zero emission at present across Canada, bringing it to 100% zero emission, and then really on the order of magnitude of doubling, and on some estimates potentially tripling that capacity over the next few decades, with electricity at the heart, not just of energy, but of home heating, of transportation, many industrial processes, and on. And so there is a scale that gives one sense of the orders of magnitude of investment. Now, that 1.3 trillion, what is not being asked is that is the federal government is, of course, supplying that, nor necessarily provincial governments. There are roles to play. There are key things that both levels of government can do. We can help with interties. We can provide incentives to accelerate, particularly on the demand side, for key emerging technologies that are not just for generation, but also for storage, such as hydrogen. Mr. Bradley, rightly, in my judgment, referenced small modular reactors as another opportunities. But a lot of the capital, a lot of the investment will come from the companies themselves, and some of them are publicly owned firms, but effectively private sector capital that will be reinvested.
Can I ask on the $8 billion net zero accelerator, would you support hiving off some percentage of that for a breakthrough fund?
In terms of breakthrough technology,
high risk, high reward.
Yes, I agree. I know what you mean, and I would agree with it. In the interest of time, I'll just say yes.
And you've written financial markets increasingly recognize that sustainable investment is the new horizon that can bring enormous opportunities ranging from transforming energy to reinventing protein. Do you think we also need to, as it relates to high risk, high reward, look at alternative proteins as well?
It's a enormous opportunity, and pea protein, for example, is a big and growing business, an opportunity for our Canadian farmers. Yes.
When we look at financing in the additional investment we're going to need, and when we look back at the scale of spending we've seen even in the COVID crisis and the disproportionate impacts of the COVID crisis on different parts of our society, you've previously written high income inequalities are dwarfed by staggering wealth inequalities. Now, you've written recently about how the market price has increasingly become divorced from human value. Mariana Mazzucato has written about this as well. You both, to my knowledge, have said we need to move beyond GDP. She has embraced wealth taxation, though. And I wonder, would you support a move towards a greater conversation about fair taxation in this country as we build back better in that language? But would you support a greater conversation around wealth taxation?
I think the first thing is to, if I may, is to dimension what we need to do. Your first line of questioning, which is on the orders of magnitude of the investment we need for sustainable growth and inclusive growth, bring that in the context of our existing budgetary envelope, in other words, our existing revenue envelope, think about how we can optimize within that, and only then move to these broader issues. I'm a strong believer that the best way to reduce inequalities is to grow opportunity for a broader range of Canadians. I understand why we haven't discussed it, Chair, but I'll just refer to my supporting documents around a digital strategy, because I think that can play a huge role in reducing inequality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Notre prochain tour, c'est député Lemire.
Member Lemire, you have 2.5 minutes for our next round. Thank you. My question is for Mr. Bonifaci. How can you produce new renewable energy? And we've heard the Electricity Association, but how can we do more renewable and circulated? Well, first of all, briefly, I don't think we have much time here, but I think that despite the success that I have had over my career, I think it's important to facilitate developers such as myself who want to be able to build renewable energy infrastructure. This is an area that's accessible for all people that are able to come to build. And so I think that, as I said earlier, if Berkshire Hathaway's, we're not very well considered in terms of our capacity to pay back our debt. So so that's an issue. But if you look at the Amazon situation and all of their plans, well, these are people that are producing greenhouse gas, and there are others also. So I think that we need to have a mechanism to be able to help us out, to have a transition bank, for example, to be able to ensure that funds are more accessible. And I think that we also have to have a tax system that would be advantageous. So we have project financing that will give you the possibility to have equities for people that are wanting to invest, and to also have leverages from banks. So if you can help our investors with tax credits, that would help things. Thank you, Mr. Bonifaci. I would like to now ask a question of Mr. Carney. I think it's important. I was working with young people in terms of politics, so I have a question that I like to ask them. But I used to ask the young people, if you were Prime Minister, what would you do different than what's being done right now by the Parliament? So that's what I'd like to ask you, especially for greening of the economy. Well, thank you very much for your question. Initially, I would like to reject the premise of your question. I'm not a prime minister, and I don't work for the government, and so I'd like to be clear on that. And I think that the advice that I would give for net zero for Bill C-12, for example, is important. And also we need to have a clearer strategy and a more holistic and comprehensive strategy for an energy transition to take place. including investments in interties and investment tax credits.
And last point, I really would, and I recommend to this committee, to have a digital strategy, a comprehensive digital strategy for Canadians, because this is fundamental. But this is advice, not it's not a hypothesis of if I had some other role. Merci.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Our next round goes to MP Massey. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just continuing, Mr. Carney, then I've had a digital Bill of Rights in the House of Commons for 5 years. Do you support a digital Bill of Rights? So it's enshrined in legislation?
I do, Mr. Massey.
Okay, thanks. And I won't get into the specifics, that's not, but I am curious about kind of following up with regards to there's expenditures and revenue coming in, but then there's also like debt and interest occurred on Canadians. And so I would ask if in your previous roles with bank charges and fees going up, are they appropriate right now, or do you believe that government needs to, I guess, step in to regulate? What's your position on that? I mean, I think this is important for the cost of Canadians right now, and fees are going up, and also credit card rates and so forth. Can I get your opinion on those two things, whether you think that they're fair for consumers right now, and whether or not there needs to be government regulation to step in or not on banking fees and credit card rates?
I'll make 2 points. The first is that I think it is important that that is included in the responsibilities of the FCAC, the Financial Commissioner, Consumer Associate for Canada, and that responsibility in terms of financial institution conduct and fairness. Secondly, I'd underscore the opportunity, building from your digital Bill of Rights and my submission to this committee, the very large opportunity from competition in financial services for Canadians. And when I mean digital competition in financial services, we have an opportunity to build with appropriately protected by digital Bill of Rights. That's why you rightly started there, appropriately protected there, to use data that exists in our economy, to use a new central bank digital currency and the opportunities that come from that to significantly improve competition. And that will have a direct impact, in my judgment, on both credit card fees and banking fees, all the while providing better service.
Yeah, I only have 30 seconds. I appreciate that as an ideology, but when that doesn't take place, so a good example is that I have no banks that are closing their branches and so forth, and I have loan companies with higher rates popping up because nobody can cash even their government checks. Do you believe, though, that there's a responsibility, and what is the breaking point for the government to intersect and to act? If there is not that point, I just appreciate to know that element. Where is that?
I wholeheartedly disagree with your point. This is an ideology. This is a major opportunity for Canadians, and I underscore it's why I raised it in my opening remarks. I recommend this committee and the government and Parliament take this seriously and seize this opportunity for Canadians, because this is how we'll have inclusive finance, better finance.
You know, I tried to ask a sincere question about a position on this, and I don't want to be belligerent.
MP Massey, my apologies. You're really over time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Our next, we only have two more questions, groups of questions left. So I know we're getting tight on time. So I'll ask everyone to please respect the clock. MP Polyev, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Is there anything that you can point to that you think the current federal government is doing wrong? An example.
Well, I think in my opening comments, I would say that I would reinforce the measures that the government is doing or is proposed in C12. In the interest of your time, I won't go into further detail on that, but that is one example that's directly relevant to this. Secondly,
you can't think of anything that they've done wrong.
Well,
so it's just a very short question.
Well, I'm giving an answer, if I may. The second thing I would do is I recommend that the government does and Parliament does, is that for the investment tax credits that are rightly, as my understanding in the budget, address carbon capture and storage and green hydrogen, I would expand the application of that to at least all 43.1, all technologies under 43.1 the tax code, and I would review
that's a good
that basket and expand it. So it depends on your definition of wrong. I mean, I think that more can be done. And
can I ask you a question about your windmills? You boasted a lot about the windmills that Brookfield has. How many birds have those windmills killed?
I have no idea.
Okay, because conservation groups in the United States estimate that windmills kill, by 2030, they'll be killing over 1.4 million birds. And that in 2012, they killed over 500,000 birds. Is that does that bother you at all? Or do you think that's just the price of doing business and turning over a profit to your shareholders?
One of the things, Mr. Poilievre, is perhaps unlike you, I accept that climate change is real. And I'm aware that over the course of my lifetime, your lifetime, 70% of the mammals on Earth have and species have been reduced. That we are in the sixth. We're talking about the sixth mass extinction, and the issue to address it requires renewable energy.
And we're investing more in foreign oil as you're doing, and profiting off of the biggest emitting country in the world, in China. So thank you for your lecture and all that. But it's been pretty clear through your testimony today, if I could, that whether it's your refusal to commit to turning down these massive and unjustifiable subsidies in Ontario that have driven people into poverty and people to the food bank, whether it's your refusal to recognize the genocide in China against the Uyghurs for fear that you would lose out on business in that country, whether it's your false statement that your company is net zero when it's not net zero, or whether it is your decision to continue profiting off of foreign petroleum investments in the Middle East, in Latin America, while opposing our energy workers here at home, that your talk is really more hypocritical window dressing than it is actually environmental, social, and governance. And so, when we see people who come here with their big salaries and lecture working class people about why they should pay more for energy and have less jobs in energy in the resource sector, while you are protected and your company makes a fortune off of it, can you understand why people are just a little bit suspicious of the motives?
Mr. Poilievre, there's limited time to correct all the falsehoods in that, the premise of the statement, but let me go through. First, I was clear about the contribution of Brookfield, which is absolutely enormous to renewable energy, including in this country.
Is it net zero?
The equivalent, as I said, it is the only major asset manager that is on the path to net zero.
Is it net zero now, as you said? You claimed it was net zero.
Mr. Poilievre, may you let
please?
Sure.
The commitment to ethically sourcing and vendor management. I am committed. I'm absolutely committed to supporting, first, recognizing that there's an energy transition. Second, recognizing that by doing so, we can create huge jobs, huge opportunities across the energy sector. That thirdly, that isn't just going to happen. If we bicker and fight and debate, but don't move to actual policies, actual measures, we are not going to get Canadians the jobs and the futures that they deserve. We are not going to preserve our natural heritage. We are not going to address climate change. We are not going to have a stronger and more inclusive economy. I came here with a series of proposals. You have asked nothing about any of those proposals. You've betrayed no interest in any of the issues that will actually create a more sustainable future for other Canadians. You betrayed no interest in any of the comments of the experts and the entrepreneurs that came to this committee. We need more focus on solutions, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's the end of MP Poilievre's time. We now go to MP Jacek for the last round. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I do want to thank all the witnesses for your very interesting testimony. And I wish we had more time to get into some of your suggestions. But our committee is charged with making concrete recommendations for the economic recovery post-COVID-19. And we've been focusing very much on the green economy. So turning first to Mr. Carney, in terms of your international experience, U.S. Special Envoy and so on, are there any areas other than perhaps the financial investment that both you and Mr. Bradley have referenced that is needed? Are there any areas that you think Canada is missing in terms of initiatives that we haven't addressed here today, perhaps? Could you give us some opinion on some of your international experience and knowledge?
I recognize time is short, so thank you for the question. Apart from the financial initiatives, in other words, the ones for the financial sector, so I'll take those as read. I would emphasize the advantages of, we have not talked about building codes. It's not directly in your responsibility, but working with others for building codes. We've referred to Mr. Bonapace's comments at the outset and the importance of pulling those through and pulling demand through on that. I'll emphasize as well the possibility of contract for differences within the hydrogen sector and the importance of developing that those technologies as well. I'll also refer quickly to my comments moments ago about investment tax credits, expanding the universe for that, and actually having a dynamic contribution to, let's call it 43.1. I think you know what I mean, because the one thing we know is that people such as those represented from the, not myself, but the entrepreneurs here, they will come up with new ideas and new technologies. And so we need a dynamic way in order to provide a level playing field for support for those technologies. Last point. I recognize electricity is a provincial responsibility, but I do underscore, as Mr. Bradley said at the outset, just how central this is to our transition. We need to recognize that. We need to do everything we can to support what's required.
Would you have any suggestions as to what we should avoid doing in terms of the recovery, based perhaps on other countries' experiences?
I think the biggest thing to avoid is any stop-start policies. It is incredibly valuable to build a track record, to make it clear which technology paths, which energy paths, and which policy paths are going to be used. So I will be very clear that I think the moves that have been made on the carbon price and providing the prospect of having it legislated to 2030, that is one of the most powerful incentives globally to provide support for investment and to encourage investment. Its power will grow with time. And in addition, of course, the social aspect is being addressed through the rebates to Canadians.
And you've referenced as an example that we didn't talk much about carbon capture. I'd like to just give you the opportunity perhaps to elaborate on your thoughts there.
Well, I just underscore that carbon capture is important for several reasons. One, we've talked a bit about the, if I can call it conventional energy, oil and gas in Canada. We will maximize the lifespan of that energy with carbon capture and storage. That's the first point. Secondly, we create the opportunity for a blue hydrogen industry, which can use our fossil fuel resources, natural gas, can use much of our existing energy infrastructure, pipelines and others, but we need carbon capture and storage for that. Number three, we need it for our industrial processes, many of our industrial processes. And number four, we have much of the expertise. We have the geology that can support it, and we have also entrepreneurial companies on direct air capture. We need to. I think there are measures that are being taken in that regard. We need to make sure that they're adequate. There are good, test examples out there, or real projects that are out there. There's a new project that's being proposed by ATCO and Suncor on the hydrogen side, and I think that will show whether we have the adequate support in place in order to help build this industry, which will be essential.
And finally, oh dear, if I could quickly, Madam Chair.
Very, very quickly, like 10 seconds.
So for small, medium-sized enterprises, tax credit incentives would be probably the most important to get them on board.
Provided they're refundable, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that finishes our last round. And I want to thank everyone for their time today and for going over a little bit on the time. Merci. aux témoins.
Thank you to the witnesses for your very important testimony for our study.
In terms of drafting our report with respect to the economic recovery from COVID-19. So I want to thank you again for being with us today. And I'd like to thank the interpreters. Merci beaucoup pour votre travail acharné.
Thank you very much for your very hard work. I know that it was a passionate exchange, but I'd like to thank you once again for your work.
Here, and with that, I call the meeting adjourned.
Merci à tous. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Merci.